You are welcome to part 4 of abandonment. We are still talking about abandonment patterns. Again, as an adult, we can only be able to check if we might be struggling with abandonment trauma by the patterns we keep enacting in relationships, or basically through life. So what are these patterns? So patterns, the first pattern I'll describe today is when one is constantly feeling that their life is shattered. There's a sense of despair and there's a lot of emptiness within. When people feel like they're not making progress, other people have done exceptionally well, but themselves, there's a struggle. Even when people have actually achieved, they're not able to celebrate the areas they are thriving because they are constantly feeling an emptiness, despair. They are shattered with no exact reason. In other words, there are people who feel like this because their life is actually shattered in ways, or they are going through a phase, or they are going through, struggles of life. Those ones are different. I'm talking about people who are constantly in this space, even when everyone feels like your life is moving, you're doing excellently well. Those ones are the ones I am describing, because when you're constantly feeling these levels of shattering, emptiness, despair, hopelessness, almost a lack of sense of progression, when your life is not honestly stuck, you might be dealing with abandonment trauma, because abandonment creates a hole in the heart. There's nothing that actually fills it, and this is where the sense of despair tends to come from. There's a sense of feeling overwhelmed by a new relationship, whether this relationship is a work relationship, whether it is a friendship, and worse if it is intimate relationship. Anytime a new relationship is forming, one feels overwhelmed because there's almost a sense of you've got to do so much to prove yourself, you've got to show yourself, you've got to do this so that they can perceive you in this certain kind of way. When you are struggling with feeling constantly overwhelmed anytime you're in a new setup, then you might be struggling with abandonment trauma. The other pattern of abandonment is when you're not able to say no, even when no is the right thing to say, and the motivation for not being able to say no, if you check deep within, you feel like, but if I say no, they will not like me. If I say no, they will reject me. If I say no, they will not think I'm a good person. If I say no, they'll think I'm not a pleasant person. They might not want to be in my life. When the motivation is fear of rejection, then you are struggling with abandonment trauma. The other pattern of abandonment trauma is the tendency to pick unavailable people emotionally. One of the things I encounter in therapy is people telling me the last 3 or 4 partners that I can remember were all emotionally unavailable. And my response has always been, we attract who we are. While I do not judge my clients for being in that space, I take them through a journey of understanding that they lack a connection with themselves, probably because they struggle with abandonment trauma. And subconsciously, they keep attracting partners who are unavailable. So that mirrors your own abandonment issues, because when you don't struggle with abandonment, you understand what emotional availability is, and you can tell in the beginning days, before you even make them fully functioning relationships, you can be able to tell that the people you're dealing with are emotionally unavailable. Another pattern of abandonment trauma is detaching soon after a relationship begins to show stability. We are good in the beginning, we are good in the process. As we proceed we seem to be doing very well until when we get to a place where it looks serious, it looks like it might be productive, it looks like it might end up being something, and then suddenly there's a fear, and then suddenly there are all the reasons why this can't work, and suddenly there's all the self-sabotage by beginning to find reasons to detach from those setups. That is a sign of abandonment trauma. The other pattern of abandonment trauma is when one feels challenges, when one goes through, when one feels they have no capacity to deal with day-to-day challenges of relationships. We appreciate that any functional relationships will have challenges, and most of them actually, because these are two different individuals merging, and therefore when normal challenges happen in relationships and someone really struggles with managing those, because to them it means that if we are struggling, if we are having differences, if we are having conflicts day to day, then it means we are not fit to be with each other, or we are not best suited for each other. And I'm not talking about the kind of challenges that escalate and there's violence, the kind of challenges that escalate and there's no communication for 5 days. Now, those ones probably would be pointing to people who have challenges in resolving conflicts, or actually they have other psychological issues that needs attention. And I'm talking about day-to-day challenges when we don't agree here, when our perceptions are different here, when our way of looking at life is different here, when our goals differ, because that is normal, and then we feel like this is too much and it distances us when we feel like these relationships can't work. That could be pointing to an abandonment pattern and showing us that we could be dealing with abandonment trauma. When there is extreme sensitivity to rejection, when a person says no, they have rejected you. When they are not attending to you, they are rejecting. When you ask for a day out and they are not available, they are rejecting you. Any single thing is interpreted as rejection, and also rejection feels very intense for you. You might be dealing with abandonment trauma. In different circumstances, when you see people for a few days and then they say, well, you're an amazing person, but I just realized we are different. Or friends say, well, you're a good person, but I don't feel like we can be able to make this work. We cannot be able to make this friendship work because of 1, 2, 3, or I was looking for 5, 6, 7, and you take this personally, you might be dealing with abandonment trauma. So when one struggles and finds themselves shutting down emotionally or sexually with no reason, and I'm not talking about women who are going through hormonal issues and therefore they are struggling with their emotions, no, or sexually they are struggling, not those ones. Basically, from time to time you have seasons, a month, 2 months, when you shut down emotionally. You don't know what's going on, you cannot explain, you are very, you are very moody, or you're going through your own spectrum of emotions, you don't understand them, and other people do not understand you. Then you have other seasons of coming back to normal and being all right, and then you're struggling no more, then you go back to the seasons of struggling and shutting down emotionally and sexually. You are dealing with abandonment trauma.